fix that crack in 30 days or pay $50 daily until you do.
I stared at Cordelia Whitmore, this woman who doesn't even live on my street, standing in my driveway with a clipboard like she's some federal inspector.
What crack?
She pointed at a line in my concrete so thin I had to squat down and squint to see it.
That eyesore is destroying neighborhood property values.
This is the same woman who's been photographing my house every morning for 3 weeks, timing my sprinklers, measuring my grass with a ruler. The sound of her heels clicking on my driveway at 7 a.m. has become my personal alarm clock from hell. My crime? A hairline fracture you could cover with a Band-Aid. But Cordelia just picked the wrong divorced engineer to mess with, and what I did to fix that crack now lights up the entire street every single night. What would you do when fake authorities try extorting you? 6 months ago, I thought I'd found salvation. Willowbrook Estates looked perfect on paper. Mature oak trees, quiet cul-de-sacs, excellent schools for Emma's weekend visits. After 18 months of divorce, lawyers bleeding my savings dry, I needed somewhere stable to rebuild what was left of my life. The house was a modest 2-story colonial, rough around the edges but structurally sound. Perfect weekend project for a mechanical engineer who'd been working 60-hour weeks just to afford child support payments. I could already picture Emma and me painting her bedroom that sunshine yellow she'd been sketching, maybe finally building the treehouse we'd planned before everything fell apart. My first Saturday morning, I stood barefoot on the front porch with coffee, breathing in honeysuckle and listening to sprinklers whisper across lawns so perfect they looked painted. The concrete felt solid under my feet, everything my life wasn't anymore. That's when Cordelia Whitmore entered my world. She materialized week 2, white Lexus purring up my driveway like a shark sensing blood. Mid-50s, blonde hair lacquered into submission, carrying a leather portfolio that screamed fake authority. "You must be our new neighbor," she announced, heels clicking against my driveway like a metronome counting down to execution. Cordelia Whitmore, Neighborhood Standards Coordinator. The way she surveyed my property, eyes scanning from roofline to foundation like I was operating a meth lab, made every divorced dad instinct scream danger. "Lovely home," she continued with that smile people use before delivering terminal diagnoses. "So much potential once we bring it up to community standards." I forced neighborly pleasantries. "New guy. Keep the peace." Think about Emma's stability. Week 3, everything changed. Loading my truck for another soul-crushing day at the office, I spotted Cordelia crouched beside my walkway with measuring tape and clipboard, photographing something like she was documenting war crimes. Her perfume, expensive and suffocating, hit me before I'd gotten within 10 feet. "Morning, Cordelia. Conducting a survey?" She looked up with predatory satisfaction. "Documenting a Section 12.4 violation, Jake. This sidewalk damage requires immediate professional attention." I followed her pointing finger to a hairline crack in my concrete, maybe 6 inches long and thin as dental floss. The rough texture where tree roots had shifted earth beneath posed zero safety risk. I'd walked over it hundreds of times without noticing. "This crack threatens neighborhood property values," she explained, scribbling notes. "HOA covenant mandates professional repair. We maintain standards here." The formal violation notice arrived Monday, taped to my door like a court summons. 30 days to comply or face $50 daily fines. Escalating. That afternoon, desperate for sanity, I found neighbor Bob in his garage, the smell of sawdust and motor oil mixing with his frustrated sighs as he sanded cabinet doors. "She's gotten 3 families to move," Bob said over beer, pausing his work. "Constant citations, escalating fines. They gave up rather than fight." "But she's not actually on the HOA board?" "Board president's some old guy who lives in Florida half the year. Cordelia just assumed enforcement powers. Most people are too tired to challenge her." Maria appeared across the street and Bob waved her over. Her face darkened hearing my situation. "She fined me $75 because my kids drew hopscotch on our driveway," Maria whispered, glancing around nervously. "Called it visual blight affecting community aesthetics." That night, after Emma's call about her school play, another event I'd missed due to mandatory overtime, I attacked our HOA covenant. 23 pages of legal quicksand, but I'm an engineer. I solve problems methodically. And buried in section 15.7, I found something that made me smile for the first time in weeks. Something that was about to turn Cordelia's perfect little dictatorship upside down. Day 15 of my 30-day countdown, The smell of Cordelia's aggressive perfume announced her arrival before I even saw her white Lexus. This time she carried a different clipboard, one with what looked like an official municipal seal at the top. "Jake, I'm afraid the situation has escalated beyond simple repair," she announced, heels clicking against my driveway like a judge's gavel. No pretense of neighborly courtesy anymore. The citation she handed me made my engineering brain start calculating lawsuit costs. Notice of violation, escalated warning. Sidewalk structural damage now constitutes pattern of negligent maintenance. $100 daily fines commence in 15 days, escalating to $150 after 45 days. Pattern? I squinted at the document. We're talking about one hairline crack. "I've conducted comprehensive property documentation," she replied, producing her phone like evidence in a murder trial. Photo after photo of my house from every angle, slightly overgrown flower beds, a garden hose coiled by the garage, Emma's pink bike from last weekend's visit. The woman had been stalking my property like a private investigator building a case. "This transcends one crack, Jake. It's about community integrity." That tone again, the sound of someone who believes they hold absolute power. But here's what 2 decades of troubleshooting complex machinery had taught me. When someone claims absolute authority, always check their credentials first. That evening, I dove deep into our HOA's actual governing documents. 3 hours of legal archaeology revealed something fascinating. There was no such position as Neighborhood Standards Coordinator anywhere in our covenant. Our board consisted of 5 elected seats, only 2 currently filled, Glenn Hartwell as president, wintering in Florida, and Margaret Kim as treasurer, working night shifts at the hospital. Every violation notice Cordelia had issued, completely unauthorized. She'd been running a solo enforcement operation for 2 years, collecting money without any legal standing whatsoever. It reminded me of something my old boss used to say. The loudest person in the room usually has the least actual authority. The next morning I called Big Jim's Concrete after seeing his truck around the neighborhood. "Oh yeah, your crazy neighbor," Jim chuckled when I described the situation. "She dragged me out there 3 weeks ago demanding a quote for full sidewalk replacement. $2,400 for a crack I could fix with $15 of filler compound. She insisted on full replacement. Said it was HOA requirements. I've been pouring concrete since before she was born, and that crack's purely cosmetic. Hell, I've seen worse damage on courthouse steps." Something clicked in my engineering brain. "What about decorative repair options? You mean colored fillers? Sure, they make everything now. Glow-in-the-dark compounds, metallic finishes, UV reactive materials. Popular with homeowners who want something unique. Why, you thinking artistic?" Very artistic, actually. That weekend brought Cordelia's next escalation. I was teaching Emma tire-changing basics, one of those essential skills every person should know, when the familiar sound of designer heels announced trouble. "Jake, we need to address weekend noise ordinances," she proclaimed, clipboard loaded for warfare. Emma looked up from the tire jack, grease smudged on her cheek and pure concentration in her brown eyes. "Hi, Miss Cordelia. Dad's teaching me car stuff." "How rustic," Cordelia replied with the enthusiasm of someone discussing sewage treatment. "However, Section 8.2 restricts power tool usage before 9 a.m. on weekends." I checked my watch. 8:47 a.m. 13 minutes early warrants a citation? Community standards apply universally, Jake. Some residents value Saturday morning tranquility. Another note scribbled with prosecutorial determination. Secondary violation, documented. Emma's excited smile faded. She'd been so proud learning something practical, and this woman was treating our father-daughter time like a neighborhood disturbance. Then Cordelia made the mistake that transformed this from property harassment into personal warfare. "Perhaps your daughter could visit during more appropriate hours," she suggested, eyeing Emma like an inconvenient pest. "When household activities won't disrupt community peace." The sound of my molars grinding was probably audible. Emma's weekend visits were sacred, the one constant we'd preserved through divorce chaos, custody negotiations, and starting over. This woman had just declared war on my relationship with my daughter. "We'll be more considerate of timing," I managed through clenched teeth, my hand finding Emma's shoulder protectively. After Cordelia clicked away in her heels of judgment, Emma looked up with those serious eyes that cut straight through to my heart. "Dad, why is that lady so angry all the time?" "Some people confuse having power with being powerful, kiddo, but they usually don't realize when they're picking fights with the wrong person." That night, after Emma fell asleep during our movie marathon, I opened my laptop and began researching industrial-grade photoluminescent compounds with the focused intensity of an engineer designing the perfect solution to an impossible problem. 3 weeks later, Cordelia orchestrated what she called an emergency community standards meeting, the first official gathering in 18 months, according to Bob's meticulous neighborhood records. The community center reeked of industrial bleach and desperation when I arrived Tuesday evening. 8 homeowners scattered among 30 metal folding chairs that squeaked like tortured mice every time someone shifted nervously. Cordelia commanded the front of the room with a projector setup that would have impressed Fortune 500 executives, clicking through slides titled "Property Value Crisis, Immediate Action Required." The woman had clearly missed her calling as a corporate fearmonger. Community-wide home values have declined 2% in 6 months, she announced, laser pointer dancing across fabricated charts with the confidence of someone who'd never fact-checked her own statistics. Slide 4 featured my sidewalk crack, photographed with macro lens precision and enlarged until it resembled the Grand Canyon carved into concrete. Red arrows pointed at the structural failure threatening our entire subdivision's economic stability. I'd seen this psychological warfare in corporate boardrooms, overwhelm people with impressive-looking data until they stop questioning whether any of it makes sense. But 20 years of troubleshooting had taught me that the fanciest presentations usually hide the biggest lies. Maria nudged my elbow and whispered, "She's been documenting everyone's properties for weeks. Mrs. Patterson's bird feeder got its own dedicated slide." The vote manipulation unfolded with surgical precision. Glenn still sunbathing in Florida, only 7 neighbors present, and Cordelia wielding parliamentary procedure like a weapon. Within 20 minutes, she'd maneuvered herself into the fabricated position of acting standards enforcement officer with emergency powers. "Protecting our community requires decisive leadership," she declared, distributing official-looking penalty schedules. "Current fines lack sufficient deterrent effect." The new structure made my jaw clench. $150 daily for unresolved violations, escalating to $300 after 60 days, with authority to place liens on non-compliant properties. Bob voted against with the enthusiasm of a man watching democracy die, but 4 neighbors nodded along with Cordelia's manufactured authority. After the meeting, I found Mrs. Patterson struggling with her car keys in the parking lot, hands shaking from more than just age. "That woman's been terrorizing me for months," she confided, voice breaking with suppressed rage. $200 fine for my bird feeder supposedly creating wildlife nuisance issues. It's hung in the same oak tree for 12 years, bringing me joy every morning. "Did you pay her fine?" "Fixed income, dear. Had to choose between her extortion and my heart medication this month." The defeat in her weathered voice ignited something cold and methodical in my engineer's brain. That night, fueled by righteous anger and industrial-strength coffee, I performed legal archaeology on our neighborhood's founding documents. Hours of cross-referencing municipal codes with HOA bylaws until the words blurred together like ancient hieroglyphics. Then I found it, buried in Section 15.7 like a forgotten treasure map. The Architectural Enhancement Clause had been included in our original 1987 covenant to encourage creative landscaping and unique decorative features. Homeowners could implement aesthetic improvements that beautify common areas and enhance community character with simple written notification, no board approval required. The brilliant part? Enhancement projects specifically superseded standard maintenance regulations. My crack repair could be reclassified from mandatory compliance to voluntary beautification, completely removing it from Cordelia's jurisdiction. It was like discovering I'd been playing chess while she was stuck playing checkers. But Cordelia wasn't finished escalating. The next morning, I discovered her crouched beside my driveway at dawn, measuring something with obsessive precision that would have impressed a crime scene investigator. "Jake, we need to address your refuse container positioning," she announced, consulting a 3-ring binder thick enough to stop bullets. "My what now?" "Trash bins must be removed from street visibility within 4 hours of collection completion." She gestured at my garbage cans like they were radioactive waste. "These have been visible for 6 hours and 17 minutes. The sheer insanity of the moment hit me. This woman was now regulating how quickly I moved empty trash cans. But instead of rage, I felt the serene calm that comes when you realize your opponent has just handed you complete victory. "I'll move them immediately," I said with exaggerated compliance. "Formal citation this time," she replied, scribbling with the dedication of someone documenting historical atrocities. Future violations incur standard penalties. As her heels clicked away like a metronome counting down to her own defeat, Bob appeared from his garage with coffee and the expression of someone watching his neighborhood's soul die. She cited Ashley yesterday for her kids using non-regulation sidewalk chalk colors, he muttered. Apparently neon pink violates our community aesthetic standards. That afternoon, grinning like a man who'd just discovered buried treasure, I ordered $47 of industrial photoluminescent epoxy, the same compound used in emergency aircraft runway lighting. Delivery estimate, 3 days to prepare the most spectacular architectural enhancement our subdivision had ever witnessed. Thursday's surprise made my coffee taste like battery acid. Taped to my door like a death warrant was an emergency compliance order, blazing with official-looking seals and threatening language that would terrify most homeowners into immediate submission. Final notice. Property owner has 10 days to complete mandated repairs or face immediate legal action, including property liens and foreclosure proceedings. But 20 years of reading technical specifications had trained my eye for details. Real municipal documents don't use Comic Sans font for legal seals, and the contact number traced directly to Cordelia's personal cell phone. She was counterfeiting government authority with the same creativity she applied to neighborhood terrorism. A quick call to city planning confirmed my suspicions. No emergency orders existed, no pending liens, zero municipal backing for her threats. Cordelia had been manufacturing legal documents like a suburban dictator, issuing fake proclamations from her white Lexus throne. Her next escalation crossed every line I thought existed. Friday morning, loading Emma's overnight bag for her weekend visit, I heard those familiar designer heels clicking against concrete like a countdown timer to catastrophe. "Jake, we need to address your custody arrangement's impact on community standards," Cordelia announced, smartphone ready to document whatever fresh violation she'd invented. The smell of her aggressive perfume mixed with my rising blood pressure. My what now? Section 9.4 governs repetitive weekend disturbances from irregular household occupancy. She'd apparently memorized her entire fictional rulebook. Your daughter's visits consistently generate elevated noise. Bicycle operation, outdoor recreation, children's vocalizations. My grip tightened on Emma's bag until my knuckles went white. This woman was weaponizing fake regulations to control when and how I could parent my own child. Emma's visits are court-mandated, I said through clenched teeth. Court orders don't supersede community tranquility standards, Jake. Perhaps supervised visits at more appropriate venues would better serve neighborhood harmony. That's when something cold and methodical settled into my engineer's brain. Threatening my property was harassment. Threatening my relationship with Emma was declaration of total war. That evening, Maria forwarded screenshots that made my hands shake with rage. Cordelia had created a private Facebook group called Willowbrook Standards Documentation, where she'd been sharing surveillance photos of neighborhood families like we were wanted criminals. My house featured prominently time-stamped images of Emma's bike, my morning routine, even the precise angle of my truck in the driveway. The captions read like police reports. Subject exhibits non-compliant behavioral patterns. Child presence indicates household instability. Property modifications suggest resistance mindset. She'd been conducting systematic espionage against families guilty of nothing more than existing in her perfect suburban vision. But the revelation that changed everything came when I cross-referenced her citation patterns with county property records. Every targeted household fell below neighborhood median value. Mrs. Patterson's modest cottage, Ashley's starter home, my divorce recovery colonial, we weren't random violations. Cordelia was conducting economic cleansing disguised as community improvement, systematically terrorizing families who couldn't afford homes in her social stratosphere. The realization hit me like a blueprint finally coming into focus. This wasn't about standards at all. It was about class warfare with clipboards and fake authority. My photoluminescent epoxy arrived Friday in packaging so ordinary you'd never guess it contained neighborhood revolution. The technical specifications read like engineering poetry. Strontium illuminate crystals provide 12+ hour luminescence after UV activation. Permanent concrete adhesion. Weather-resistant formula exceeds all municipal building codes. I'd learned something valuable during my corporate days. Always document everything before taking action. Our HOA's architectural enhancement clause required written notification, not permission, so I drafted a formal letter with the precision of someone preparing legal armor. Per Section 15(7), notification of planned architectural enhancement, decorative sidewalk repair using photoluminescent safety compound. Project creates evening pedestrian lighting while addressing maintenance concerns. Installation scheduled pending weather conditions. Hand-delivered copies went to Glenn Hartwell's Snowbird mailbox and Margaret Kim's night shift schedule, with backup documentation filed at City Planning. Everything legal, documented, and completely bulletproof against Cordelia's manufactured authority. Saturday morning, the garage filled with the sharp chemical smell of possibility as I mixed epoxy components. Emma watched with scientific fascination, like witnessing magic being prepared in real time. "It's really going to glow, Dad?" she asked, stirring the luminescent compound with a wooden stick. "Like captured lightning, kiddo. Bright enough to see from space." Through the garage window, Cordelia's white Lexus idled across the street, engine running while she pressed her phone to her ear with the urgency of someone calling in airstrikes. She was undoubtedly coordinating her next escalation, completely unaware she was about to witness the most spectacular architectural enhancement our neighborhood had ever seen. The woman who'd spent months terrorizing families over invisible violations was about to discover what happens when you push an engineer with nothing left to lose and a daughter to protect. The manila envelope arrived Tuesday morning with the weight of a bomb. My attorney, Sarah Tatum, had hand-delivered the results of her financial investigation into Cordelia's standards enforcement operation. My coffee went cold as I read the first page. Then I read it again, certain I'd misunderstood something fundamental about reality. Cordelia Whitmore had been operating a systematic fraud scheme for 26 months, collecting unauthorized fines from neighborhood families under the guise of HOA enforcement. The numbers made my hands shake. $8,400 in bogus violation fees sitting in her personal account, plus another $2,800 in fabricated administrative processing charges. Over $11,000 extracted from neighbors who'd trusted her manufactured authority rather than fight back. Mrs. Patterson's $200 bird feeder fine. Ashley's $150 sidewalk chalk citation. Bob's $300 unsightly garden hose penalty. All completely illegal, all pure profit for Cordelia's personal enrichment scheme. The documentation read like a criminal enterprise disguised as community service. Fake official letterhead, counterfeit municipal seals, fraudulent legal threats. She'd been running a suburban protection racket with the efficiency of organized crime. But buried on page 7, Sarah had highlighted something that made me smile for the first time in weeks. Our 1987 HOA Covenant's Architectural Enhancement Clause contained language I'd completely missed during my initial research. Homeowners could implement creative beautification projects that enhance community walkways and common areas with simple written notification. No board approval required, no authority for interference from anyone. The enhancement clause specifically superseded standard maintenance regulations. Translation: my crack repair could be legally reclassified from mandatory compliance to voluntary beautification, completely removing it from any enforcement jurisdiction. Cordelia had spent months demanding I fix my sidewalk, never realizing she was handing me legal permission to implement the most spectacular decorative repair in suburban history. Sarah's note in the margin made everything crystal clear. City planning confirms photoluminescent sidewalk compounds qualify as pedestrian safety improvements under municipal building codes. Your project isn't just legal, it's officially considered community enhancement. The beautiful irony hit me like a revelation. The woman who'd terrorized our neighborhood with fake authority had inadvertently provided legal cover for my revenge. Her harassment campaign had backfired so completely it felt like cosmic justice. I called Bob immediately, my voice shaking with suppressed laughter. "She's been stealing from us," I said without preamble. $11,000 in fake fines, all completely unauthorized. The silence stretched long enough that I thought the call had dropped. "That explains why she got so aggressive when I questioned her authority," Bob finally said. "She knew she was operating outside the law." It gets better. My glowing sidewalk repair? It's legally classified as architectural enhancement. She has zero authority to stop it. So when you light up that crack this weekend, she can't do anything except watch her perfect little dictatorship crumble in bright blue luminescence. That evening, I sat on my front porch watching Cordelia's house across the street, her white Lexus gleaming in the driveway like a monument to manufactured superiority. Behind those perfectly manicured hedges sat a woman who'd built her authority on lies, extracted money from vulnerable neighbors, and terrorized families with counterfeit legal threats. But her entire operation had been constructed on foundations of fraud that were about to collapse under the weight of actual law and real justice. The crack she'd obsessed over for months was about to become the most visible thing in our entire neighborhood, glowing every night like a beacon of malicious compliance. And there wasn't a single thing her fake authority could do to stop it. Wednesday morning, my garage transformed into something between a chemistry lab and a war room. The concrete floor felt gritty under my work boots as I spread out enough documentation to convince a federal judge, plus $47 worth of industrial compound, that would make Cordelia's life very, very bright. The photoluminescent epoxy arrived in two components that looked deceptively ordinary, like regular concrete repair until you read the technical specs. Part A smelled sharp and metallic, like lightning trapped in liquid form. Part B carried the distinctive tang of strontium aluminate crystals that would drink sunlight all day and spit it back as electric blue brilliance all night. My old corporate training kicked in as I studied the application requirements. These compounds work by absorbing ultraviolet and visible light during daylight, storing energy in crystalline structures, then releasing sustained luminescence for 12+ hours after dark. Think of it as a concrete battery that charges from the sun and powers a light show every sunset. Big Jim showed up Thursday with the enthusiasm of someone about to witness neighborhood history. 30 years pouring concrete, and I've never seen anyone this excited about crack repair, he laughed, examining my preparations like an art critic studying a masterpiece. You realize this stuff glows bright enough to guide aircraft, right? Jim, when someone spends months demanding you fix invisible damage, sometimes you fix it so spectacularly they spend the rest of their lives regretting the request. He tested the crack's depth with professional precision. Structurally perfect for epoxy adhesion. Once this cures, it's permanent as the concrete itself, 50-year minimum lifespan. Your great-grandkids will be explaining why Grandpa Jake lit up the neighborhood. That evening, I assembled my coalition of the formerly terrorized around my dining table. The smell of Maria's homemade enchiladas mixed with the sweet aroma of impending justice as we coordinated our weekend strategy. Mrs. Patterson's organizing Sunday's unveiling party, Maria reported, consulting notes written with the precision of someone planning a military operation. She's invited 3 blocks worth of neighbors, says it's time everyone saw what real community improvement looks like. Bob leaned back in his chair, leather creaking with satisfaction. Ashley contacted Channel 8, told them about innovative DIY solutions to HOA harassment. They want exclusive footage of the finished project. Mrs. Patterson's eyes sparkled with mischievous delight. City Councilman Rodriguez is attending too, very interested in creative community enhancements that boost property values without requiring taxpayer funding. The legal fortress I'd constructed was bulletproof. Written notifications filed with proper authorities, architectural enhancement documentation, municipal building code compliance certificates, every possible challenge anticipated and neutralized with engineering precision. What happens when Cordelia tries stopping you? Ashley asked, voicing everyone's unspoken question. Let her try, I replied, spreading legal paperwork like battle plans. Every interference attempt just adds to Sarah's fraud case. State investigators are already reviewing her fake fine collection scheme. Saturday dawned with brilliant sunshine that would supercharge my compound for maximum evening impact. Emma arrived early, practically vibrating with excitement about what she dubbed Dad's Revenge Science Project. The application process required surgical precision that would have impressed an aerospace engineer. First, wire brushing every debris particle from the crack until the concrete looked freshly cut. The rough texture provided perfect mechanical adhesion for the epoxy bond. Why does it smell like space? Emma asked, helping measure mixing ratios with the concentration of someone conducting Nobel Prize research. Because we're creating something that's never existed in suburban America, kiddo. Revolutionary projects always smell a little otherworldly. The chemistry demanded exact proportions, 60% base resin, 40% hardener catalyst, with photoluminescent powder comprising precisely 15% of total volume. Too little glow compound and you get disappointing results. Too much and structural integrity suffers. But get it perfect, and you create luminescent magic that glows like captured aurora. As I stirred the mixture, neighbors materialized with lawn chairs like spectators gathering for a championship game. Bob fired up his grill with the air of someone celebrating victory before the battle ended. Maria set up folding tables, and Mrs. Patterson started brewing sweet tea like she was hosting the social event of the decade. "Jake's about to demonstrate how mechanical engineers handle suburban politics," Bob announced to the growing crowd, his voice carrying 20 years of firefighting authority. The mixture glowed faintly even in daylight, promising spectacular results after sunset. Every stroke of application filled the crack with luminescent compound that would transform Cordelia's property value destroyer into the most visible safety feature our neighborhood had ever seen. Through my garage window, Cordelia's white Lexus sat idling across the street while she made increasingly frantic phone calls, desperately searching for authority figures who would stop my perfectly legal architectural enhancement. The woman who'd terrorized families for months with manufactured power was about to discover what happens when you demand an engineer fix something while providing him with complete legal cover to exceed every expectation. Saturday morning, 8:30 a.m. sharp, Cordelia's desperation reached nuclear levels. I was barely 10 minutes into mixing my first batch of luminescent compound when her white Lexus screeched into my driveway like she was responding to a 5-alarm emergency. "Stop!" she shrieked, stumbling out in heels and a bathrobe that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. "You cannot proceed with unauthorized construction activities." The smell of her panic mixed with expensive perfume created an almost toxic cloud as she waved her phone like it contained divine authority. "I've contacted the city building department, code enforcement, and the fire marshal," she announced breathlessly. "This illegal project ends immediately." I kept stirring my epoxy with the calm precision of someone who'd already done his homework. "Morning, Cordelia. Beautiful day for home improvement, isn't it? Don't you dare patronize me, Jake Williams. I have official documentation proving this violates 17 different municipal codes." She produced a stack of printed papers that looked impressive until you noticed they were just random internet searches about concrete regulations. That's when City Inspector Martinez arrived in his official vehicle, summoned by Cordelia's morning panic calls. A stocky man with 20 years of construction experience, he examined my setup with professional curiosity. "Ma'am, you reported unauthorized construction?" he asked, consulting his clipboard. "He's vandalizing common area sidewalks with industrial chemicals," Cordelia declared, pointing at my mixing station like I was brewing methamphetamines. Inspector Martinez reviewed my architectural enhancement notification, building permit exemption, decorative repairs under $500 require no permits, and municipal approval for pedestrian safety improvements. "Everything's in perfect order," he announced after 5 minutes of document review. "Photoluminescent concrete compounds are approved materials for walkway safety enhancement. Project complies with all relevant codes." Cordelia's face cycled through 17 shades of red as her emergency intervention collapsed completely. "But the neighborhood standards—" "Ma'am, this is legal repair work on private property using approved materials," Martinez interrupted. "You don't have authority to interfere with legitimate home improvement projects." As his truck pulled away, Cordelia's desperation reached new heights. She immediately called the police, claiming I was destroying community property with hazardous materials. Officer Reynolds arrived 20 minutes later, looking like a man who'd rather be directing traffic than mediating suburban drama. The smell of grilling burgers from Bob's impromptu barbecue filled the air as neighbors gathered to watch the latest episode of Cordelia versus Common Sense. "Sir, we received reports of property vandalism in progress," he said, examining the scene with professional skepticism. "Officer, I'm repairing a crack in my sidewalk using legal materials with proper documentation," I replied, showing him the same paperwork that had satisfied the building inspector. Cordelia emerged from her house with a fresh clipboard, apparently having printed new evidence during the police response time. "Officer Reynolds, this man is violating numerous HOA covenants and creating a public safety hazard with unauthorized chemical application," she announced, handing him a stack of documents that looked official until you realized they were screenshots from Home Depot's website. Officer Reynolds spent exactly 3 minutes reviewing my permits, architectural enhancement notification, and inspector approval before turning to Cordelia with the expression of someone whose patience had officially expired. "Ma'am, this is legitimate home repair work with proper documentation. You don't have authority to prevent homeowners from maintaining their properties." "But I'm the neighborhood standards coordinator." According to who? Reynolds asked, consulting his notepad. Because we've received multiple complaints about someone impersonating HOA authority and collecting unauthorized fees from residents. The color drained from Cordelia's face faster than water down a storm drain. She'd just admitted to the police that she'd been operating under false authority, confirming every allegation in Sarah's criminal complaint. The community elected me to... Ma'am, you might want to consult with an attorney before making any more statements about collecting fees or enforcing regulations, Officer Reynolds suggested with the tone of someone delivering free legal advice. As the police cruiser pulled away, my audience of neighbors broke into spontaneous applause. Emma clapped loudest of all, proud of her dad for standing up to the neighborhood bully with nothing but preparation and persistence. But Cordelia wasn't finished. Her final desperate gambit came 30 minutes later when a van marked Channel 8 News pulled up to interview me about innovative community improvement projects. Cordelia intercepted reporter Jessica Tatum before she reached my driveway, launching into a frantic monologue about property destruction and safety hazards that made her sound increasingly unhinged on camera. This man is vandalizing our neighborhood with dangerous chemicals that violate community standards, she declared, gesturing wildly at my crack repair project. Reporter Tatum examined my glowing compound with genuine interest. This looks like standard photoluminescent concrete repair. It's used in airport runways and highway safety applications. It's destroying our property values. Actually, ma'am, decorative safety lighting typically increases property values, Tatum replied diplomatically before walking away to interview the sane people. As I applied the final layer of luminescent compound, Cordelia stood in her driveway making what sounded like increasingly desperate phone calls to imaginary authorities who would never come. Sunday morning, Cordelia launched her final, most desperate assault on reality. I woke to find my entire front yard cordoned off with yellow caution tape, complete with handwritten signs declaring hazardous materials do not enter, posted every 3 feet like I'd created a nuclear waste site. The smell of fresh coffee turned bitter in my mouth as I discovered her latest manufactured emergency. She'd apparently spent the entire night crafting an elaborate crime scene around my perfectly legal sidewalk repair. Toxic chemical spill, evacuate immediately, read the largest sign, written in red marker with the artistic flair of someone having a complete psychological breakdown. Emma pressed her face against the kitchen window, staring at the yellow tape fortress surrounding our house. Dad, did we accidentally make something dangerous? No, kiddo. We just made something that scares bullies more than anything else in the world. Proof that their fake authority doesn't work. By 8 a.m., Cordelia had escalated to social media warfare. She'd created an emergency Facebook group called Willowbrook Chemical Emergency Response and posted dramatic photos of my caution-taped yard with captions that would have impressed disaster movie scriptwriters. Neighbor refuses to evacuate after illegal chemical application. Children and elderly at risk from toxic concrete contamination. Authorities have been notified but refuse to act. Sharing to save lives. The post included close-up photos of my dried epoxy compound that she'd somehow made look sinister through creative camera angles and apocalyptic lighting. But Cordelia's social media crusade backfired spectacularly. Instead of panic, neighbors started commenting with laughing emojis and sharing their own Cordelia harassment stories. Ashley posted photos of her kids' illegal chalk drawings. Bob shared his $300 garden hose citation. Mrs. Patterson added pictures of her dangerous bird feeder. Within 2 hours, #CordeliaWatch was trending in our local Facebook groups, with residents sharing screenshots of her increasingly unhinged posts like comedy gold. The morning escalated when she called Channel 8 News again, this time claiming I'd created an environmental disaster requiring hazmat team response. Reporter Jessica Tatum arrived with a camera crew expecting to document toxic waste cleanup, only to find neighbors gathering for Mrs. Patterson's scheduled glow reveal party. "Ma'am, you reported a chemical emergency?" Tatum asked, surveying the scene of lawn chairs, barbecue grills, and elderly ladies carrying casserole dishes. "This entire area is contaminated with industrial toxins," Cordelia declared, gesturing at my sidewalk like it was radioactive. "That man has poisoned our neighborhood with illegal concrete chemicals." Chen knelt beside my dried epoxy repair, examining it with professional curiosity. "This appears to be standard photoluminescent compound. It's the same material used in hospital hallways and emergency exit signs." "It's glowing!" Cordelia shrieked, as if luminescence itself was evidence of criminal activity. "Yes, ma'am. That's what photoluminescent means. It absorbs light during the day and glows at night. It's completely non-toxic and approved by every building code in America. The camera captured Cordelia's meltdown in high definition as she realized her emergency chemical spill narrative was crumbling under basic scientific scrutiny. Her final desperate move came that afternoon when she attempted to organize a neighborhood evacuation. Going door to door with printed flyers titled Toxic Exposure Emergency Protocol, she demanded families temporarily relocate until hazmat teams can assess contamination levels. Mrs. Patterson answered her door with the patience of someone humoring a confused child. "Cordelia, dear, that nice man Jake fixed a crack in his sidewalk. There's no emergency except the one in your imagination. The chemicals could be seeping into groundwater. Children could be exposed to carcinogenic vapors. Honey, I've been breathing near that sidewalk for 3 days and I feel better than I have in months. Probably because I don't have to worry about your fake fines anymore." Bob's response was less diplomatic. When Cordelia knocked on his door demanding he evacuate, he stepped onto his porch with the authority of someone who'd actually responded to real emergencies. "Lady, I've fought actual chemical fires that could melt your face off. Jake's sidewalk repair wouldn't qualify as a hazard in a kindergarten safety manual. Now get off my property before I call the police about harassment." By evening, as sunset approached and my photoluminescent compound prepared for its grand debut, Cordelia had isolated herself completely. Every neighbor she'd tried recruiting had either laughed at her manufactured emergency or shared their own stories of her harassment campaign. The woman who'd spent months terrorizing families with fake authority had transformed into the neighborhood's official source of unintentional comedy. Her yellow caution tape and handwritten warning signs had become props in her own public humiliation. As darkness fell and my sidewalk began its luminescent transformation, I could see Cordelia standing at her living room window, phone pressed to her ear, making what sounded like increasingly frantic calls to authorities who would never validate her manufactured crisis. The glow was beginning, and her reign of suburban terror was about to end in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. 7 p.m. sharp, the entire neighborhood gathered in my front yard for what Mrs. Patterson had officially dubbed the Great Glow Reveal Party. The smell of barbecue smoke mixed with anticipation as 43 residents arranged lawn chairs in a semicircle around my sidewalk like it was opening night at the theater. Emma bounced between neighbors with the excitement of someone about to witness her father make history. "It's going to be so bright you can see it from space," she announced to anyone within earshot. City Councilman Rodriguez arrived fashionably late in his official vehicle, followed by Channel 8's news van and what looked like half the municipal building department. Word had spread through social media that something unprecedented was about to unfold in suburban America. As twilight deepened, my photoluminescent compound began its transformation from ordinary concrete repair to luminescent masterpiece. The crack started glowing with the soft blue brilliance of captured lightning, growing brighter as darkness claimed the sky. "Holy shit," whispered Ashley, immediately covering her mouth while her kids stared in wonder. The luminescence expanded along every inch of the repaired fracture, creating a network of electric blue light that pulsed like alien circuitry embedded in concrete. Within 10 minutes, my sidewalk blazed bright enough to read newspapers by, visible from 3 blocks away like a landing strip for extraterrestrial visitors. The crowd erupted in spontaneous applause, camera phones capturing footage that would go viral within hours. That's when Cordelia made her grand entrance. She emerged from her house carrying what appeared to be a briefcase full of legal documents, marching across the street with the determination of someone preparing to deliver a definitive legal judgment. "This ends now," she shrieked, her voice cutting through the celebration like a rusty blade. "I have official documentation proving this violates 17 municipal codes and threatens community safety." The crowd fell silent as Cordelia positioned herself directly in front of Councilman Rodriguez, opening her briefcase to reveal stacks of printed papers that looked impressive until you realized they were just random internet searches and fabricated legal documents. "Councilman, this man has vandalized public property with hazardous industrial chemicals," she declared, handing him a document titled Emergency Cease and Desist Order that appeared to be written in Microsoft Word. Rodriguez examined her papers with the expression of someone reviewing a child's crayon drawings. "Ma'am, this appears to be a printout from Home Depot's website." "Official building code violations," Cordelia insisted, her voice rising to frequencies that probably disturbed neighborhood dogs. That glowing contamination threatens property values and public health. That's when Sarah Tatum, my attorney, stepped forward from the crowd with a folder that contained actual legal documents. Councilman Rodriguez, I'd like to present evidence of systematic fraud perpetrated by Ms. Whitmore against this neighborhood, Sarah announced, her voice carrying courtroom authority. The crowd leaned forward as Sarah displayed bank records showing Cordelia's unauthorized fine collection, documentation of her impersonation of official authority, and evidence of discriminatory enforcement targeting lower-income families. Over 14 months, Ms. Whitmore collected $11,600 in fraudulent fines from residents using fabricated legal authority, Sarah continued. She's been operating a criminal enterprise disguised as community improvement. Cordelia's face cycled through every shade of red in the spectrum as her manufactured authority crumbled in front of 43 witnesses and a news camera. I was protecting property values, she screamed, her carefully constructed facade finally shattering completely. These people don't understand community standards. They're destroying our neighborhood with their lower-class maintenance approaches. The crowd gasped audibly. In her desperation, Cordelia had just confessed to economic discrimination on camera, confirming every allegation in Sarah's legal complaint. Officer Reynolds, who'd been observing from his patrol car, stepped forward with the expression of someone who'd heard enough. Ma'am, you're under arrest for fraud, impersonation of official authority, and criminal harassment, he announced, producing handcuffs that glinted in my sidewalk's blue glow. As Cordelia was led away in restraints, still screaming about property values and community standards, the crowd burst into applause that echoed across 3 city blocks. Councilman Rodriguez approached me with genuine admiration. Mr. Williams, this is the most creative solution to neighborhood harassment I've ever witnessed. Your architectural enhancement will serve as a model for communities dealing with similar issues. Reporter Jessica Tatum thrust her microphone toward me for the money shot. Any final words about your glowing sidewalk solution? I looked down at Emma, who was beaming with pride beside the luminescent crack that had started this entire war. Then at the neighbors who'd become genuine friends through our shared struggle against manufactured tyranny. Sometimes when bullies demand you fix something that isn't broken, the best response is to fix it so spectacularly they spend the rest of their lives regretting they ever brought it up. The sidewalk pulsed electric blue behind me like a neon exclamation point, and the crowd erupted in laughter that could probably be heard in the next county. 3 months later, Cordelia's house sold to a young family who thought my glowing sidewalk was the coolest thing ever. The new neighbors, Marcus and Jennifer Tatum, brought their twin boys over the first weekend to thank me for creating what they called natural nighttime safety lighting for evening walks. The legal aftermath was swift and satisfying. Cordelia pled guilty to fraud and criminal harassment, receiving 18 months probation and court-ordered restitution of every fraudulent fine she'd collected. Mrs. Patterson got her $200 back, Ashley received $150, and Bob's $300 garden hose citation was officially declared malicious prosecution by the district attorney. Our neighborhood transformed in ways I never expected. The new HOA board, Bob as president, Maria as treasurer, Mrs. Patterson as community liaison, voted unanimously to dissolve all enforcement positions and operate on a neighbors helping neighbors philosophy instead of manufactured authority. Property values actually increased after the national media attention. Real estate agents started marketing homes in Willowbrook Estates as the community with innovative architectural enhancements and strong neighbor solidarity. My modest colonial, once targeted for property value destruction, became the unofficial landmark that tour groups drove by to photograph. Emma's science teacher invited me to speak at her school about creative problem solving and standing up to bullies. My presentation about photoluminescent compounds and legal research became the most popular parent guest lecture in the school's history, inspiring 3 other students to enter the state science fair with glow-in-the-dark projects. The sidewalk itself evolved into a neighborhood treasure. Evening dog walkers used my luminescent pathway for safe navigation. Children played hopscotch along the glowing lines. Elderly residents like Mrs. Patterson could see clearly for nighttime walks without carrying flashlights. Most surprisingly, my story inspired copycat projects across the country. A man in Oregon filled his driveway cracks with color-changing epoxy after his HOA complained about unsightly asphalt damage. A woman in Texas created a glowing garden border when her neighbors objected to her flower placement. The hashtag malicious compliance hashtag became a rallying cry for creative solutions to petty authority. Channel 8's follow-up story 6 months later featured what they called the glow-up effect. Communities nationwide implementing creative architectural enhancements instead of expensive traditional repairs. Hardware stores reported increased demand for photoluminescent compounds, and several municipalities adopted decorative infrastructure improvement programs modeled after my sidewalk project. My relationship with Emma strengthened through our shared triumph over neighborhood tyranny. She'd learned that standing up to bullies requires preparation, persistence, and sometimes creative solutions that exceed everyone's expectations. Her weekend visits became celebrations instead of stress-filled custody exchanges. The community impact extended beyond our subdivision. I donated my speaking fees from home improvement conferences to the Creative Compliance Scholarship Fund at the local technical college, supporting students who develop innovative solutions to everyday problems. The first recipient was a young woman who designed solar-powered sidewalk lighting for low-income neighborhoods. Mrs. Patterson organized monthly glow walks that became community traditions, bringing neighbors together for evening strolls along my luminescent pathway while sharing stories and strengthening friendships. What started as harassment response evolved into genuine social connection. Bob and I launched Creative Compliance Consulting, not an actual business, just neighbors helping other neighbors research legal options when facing similar harassment situations. We've assisted 12 families in 3 states, always emphasizing legal research, proper documentation, and creative solutions that exceed complainers' expectations. The technical college partnered with our neighborhood to create a community innovation lab where residents can access 3D printers, chemical mixing equipment, and legal databases for creative home improvement projects. Emma volunteers there every Saturday, teaching younger kids about photoluminescent chemistry and peaceful problem solving. A year later, my sidewalk still glows every night with the brightness of justice served cold and luminescent. Tourists occasionally drive by to see the famous Revenge sidewalk, but mostly it just provides safe lighting for neighbors walking dogs, kids riding bikes, and elderly residents maintaining their independence. The crack Cordelia obsessed over became a symbol of what happens when manufactured authority meets genuine community spirit, creative problem solving, and legal preparation. It glows as a permanent reminder that sometimes the best way to handle bullies is to give them exactly what they ask for, and exceed their wildest nightmares. Emma and I still walk along that glowing pathway every weekend, planning our next home improvement project and discussing the importance of standing up for what's right, even when it requires lighting up the entire neighborhood to make your point.
So that how Jake turned the $47 cans of Epoxy into Cordelia was a nightmare. But here's what really gets me about this story. Jake didn't just fix a crack, he exposed the truth about petty tyrants everywhere. Cordelia was protecting property values. She was running a suburban protection racket with fake authority and manufactured fear. What I love is that Jake didn't lose his temper or storm out of meetings. He did his homework. He read the fine print. And when the showdown came, he had the law on his side, while she has nothing but counterfeit documents. The sidewalk still glow every night, a permanent reminder that when bullies demand it fix something, sometimes it fixes so spectacularly that you guys ever asking. Every neighborhood had a Cordelia, measuring garage height, timing check scans like they are documenting crimes. The question is, what will you do when they come for you? Pay their bogus price and hope they disappear? Or channel your inner Jake William and turn their harassment into their nightmare? Drop a comment how you deal with a power-hungry HOA Karen. What did you do? If you enjoy seeing Cordelia get what was coming, hit subscribe. Next week, a man who turned his HOA vehicle ban into the most epic driveway display his city ever saw. Remember, sometimes the best revenge is giving bullies exactly what they ask for, just not how they expect.